Today, we're diving straight into a massive puzzle that has literally kept economists and political scientists up at night for generations. Think about it. How do we fund society, build roads, and provide security without unfairly coercing people to pay for things they just don't want? It sounds like a simple enough question, right? Well, as we unpack the source material today, you're going to see exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the inevitability of coercion, hunt for the holy grail known as the Lindahl equilibrium, tackle the infamous free rider problem, look at designing better mechanisms, and finally ask, can decentralization save us?
First up, the inevitability of coercion. Okay, before we get completely lost in high-level statecraft and tax theory, let's ground this in a situation you've absolutely been in. Imagine you're in a room with a bunch of people, and you all have to agree on a single setting for the thermostat. What happens? Someone is inevitably too hot and someone else is freezing. Heck, even the person who gets their absolute ideal temperature might be furious when the energy bill shows up. This perfectly illustrates a core truth. Collective decisions inherently involve a degree of coercion. You literally cannot please everyone when you are forced into a single shared outcome.
Now, when we hear the word coercion, our minds usually jump straight to the state using threats of violence or jail time. But in public finance, it's often just the everyday reality of that second definition. It's the unavoidable byproduct of compromise. It is the reality of paying a tax price and not getting exactly what you want in return. If we want the benefits of living in a collective society, we kind of just have to accept that compromise. Actually, scratch that. This baseline coercion isn't just a byproduct. It's practically the foundation of society. Thomas Hobbes hit the nail on the head way back in 1651 when he wrote, "Covenants without the sword are but words." Later on, thinkers like Max Weber backed this up, pointing out that a state having a monopoly on violence is historically necessary. Because think about it, if there is no overarching authority to coercively enforce a contract, the contract is useless. For private markets to even function and for public goods to exist at all, we basically voluntarily invite state coercion to keep everyone honest. Which brings us to part 2, the Holy Grail, known as the Lindahl equilibrium.
So here is the massive dilemma. If some level of coercion is baked into the cake of society, how on earth do we minimize it when we're funding public goods? Well, economists have been chasing this answer for a long time. And in 1919, a Swedish economist named Erik Lindahl proposed a literal utopia for public finance. In this perfect model, a public good is provided at the exact optimal level, and everyone pays a highly individualized tax share, a share that is exactly equal to how much they personally appreciate that good. So if you absolutely love the new public park, your personalized tax rate reflects that. If you barely use it, you pay way less. In this model, coercion drops to zero. Everyone gets exactly what they pay for. It is the absolute holy grail of economics. But then we hit part 3, the free rider problem. Here is the fatal flaw with Lindahl's beautiful ideal. It completely relies on knowing how much everyone truly values a public good. But let's be real. If the government announces, hey, we're going to tax you based on how much you tell us you like this new national defense program, what are you going to do? Rational people are just going to lie. They will underreport how much they value it, hoping their neighbors will foot the bill while they still reap all the benefits of a secure country. This is the infamous free rider problem, and it completely shatters the utopian dream of a fully voluntary, coercion-free tax system. So how do we fix that? That leads us to part 4, designing better mechanisms.
To outsmart this massive loophole in human nature, economists essentially become engineers in a specialized field called mechanism design. And it's fascinating because you literally work backwards. First, you start with your end goal, like, say, building a bridge efficiently. Then you have to engineer an incredibly clever set of rules that somehow tricks individuals into revealing their true private information, their actual demand, without lying. Only after you pull that off can you implement the final allocation. You're basically designing a game where honesty is actually the most profitable strategy for every single taxpayer.
But pulling that off is wildly difficult. It's so hard, in fact, that one researcher from our source material, John Ledyard, speculates the future of mechanism design might have to get completely sci-fi. He points out that the only real way to bypass the free rider lie entirely might be to use MRI brain scans. Seriously, the state wouldn't even ask you how much you value a public good. They'd just scan your neural signals to observe your true demand. No way to lie. It's a slightly terrifying thought, but it perfectly highlights just how impossible it is to get people to voluntarily pay for things without some mechanism of coercion. Okay, assuming we don't want the government scanning our brains, we arrive at part 5. Can decentralization save us? If mind reading is off the table, maybe there's a structural fix. What if we just push the government closer to the people? The famous tie-bout model suggests this exact thing. Just vote with your feet. If you hate the taxes or services in your current town, just pack up and move to a jurisdiction that perfectly matches your preferences. Oates' theorem backs this up, arguing that decentralized local governments are way better at catering to local tastes than some distant, detached federal entity. But wait, researcher Giorgio Brosio throws a massive caution flag here. He warns that decentralization isn't a magic wand, especially in highly divided societies. Take Macedonia's ethnic divisions as a case study. In contexts like that, decentralization can actually backfire. It can harden local ethnic lines, allow local majorities to oppress minorities, and actually increase the overall coercion people feel. To figure out what happens when these perfectly clean math models collide with wonderfully messy human beings, researchers actually run behavioral lab experiments, and the results are super interesting. Eckert, Gillette, and Ryder set up a game where players could pool their money to resist a coercive dictator. The finding? Even when it costs them out of pocket, humans will actively team up to successfully resist excessive coercion. On the flip side, Settlin and Riedel tested whether forcing just a little bit of coercion, like making some players contribute, would inspire the rest of the group to voluntarily chip in. And guess what? It doesn't. Forcing the issue partially does not magically trigger a wave of voluntary cooperation. We are wonderfully, stubbornly messy. So, as we wrap up this explainer, let's zoom all the way back to that crowded room fighting over the single thermostat. The source material makes one thing absolutely clear. A perfectly voluntary, coercion-free society without free riders, it is an economic impossibility. We literally need some level of the sword to make the covenants work. So the real question we have to ask ourselves isn't how to magically eliminate coercion entirely. The question is, how much coercion are you personally willing to trade to keep the room comfortable for everyone? It's a pretty profound question, and one that sits at the very core of how we choose to live together.